My name is Leone Kayl. My maiden name was Egger, E-G-G-E-R. I was born in McKinnon Hospital on March 2nd, 1923. And that was rather unusual in that at that time to have a hospital birth. And there was a nurse who used to bring me into the room, and she would say to the parents, "Here comes your little Tootie." Strangely enough, that turned out to be a nickname that kind of stuck with me through the years. It was only about, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I happened to find out some way that Tootie was a German word for girl. So what this had to be a German nurse, so what she was saying, "Here comes your little girl." And it was funny, after all those years, that I find out the origin of how that name, of course my, given name was Leone, and my husband always called me Leone. So when I think that I was born in 1923, and it's almost 2023, it's hard to imagine that I have been on this planet for almost a century. We had a birthday party, and it was very well attended. We put my picture in the paper the Sunday before. It just said, "I will be celebrating my 100th birthday at Augustana Lutheran Church from 1 to 4. And they set up the social room. It was set up beautifully. We had balloons, 100 balloons, and one of the great-granddaughters was at the guest book, and another granddaughter was taking pictures of the people as they came in. And I think then we had to set up so each of the families could stand in front of the gold fringe frame and have their picture taken. And I thought that was a good idea. We didn't have a formal program or anything, but it was just very well attended. And some people came that I hadn't seen for a long time that I was so surprised to see. I couldn't believe it. Oh, and that was the day I met my great-grandchild for the first time. He came from Indianapolis. That's where my grandson lives. I'm sure this second century now will be more of a challenge. I can't be as active as maybe I'd like to, with the organizations, but Jennifer kind of has stepped in to fill in that gap, where things I can't do. She can serve on some of the committees and so forth, and pick me up, get me to church, I am very grateful for each day that I'm here, and especially grateful that I am living in my own home, and this would not be possible if it weren't for my 2 daughters who live in Sioux Falls, and maybe 10 minutes away. I live in this in this house, a one-story house, so I don't have to worry about any steps and I have a big window at the front of the house. There is a huge hydrangea bush by this window. I have a bird feeder situated right there. Some bird watching is a great pastime when you're this age. Well, in 1923, my parents were, they were living in a little house in Crooks, but I was born in McKinnon Hospital, which was rather unusual for those times to have somebody born in the hospital. But it's funny, I said I was born in McKinnon Hospital. My 6 children were all born in McKinnon Hospital. Of course, now it's Avera, but anyway, I don't know what I first remember, actually. Maybe when I was like 3. Well, I was between 2 and 3. They tell me this. You're just learning to. You're talking. You're putting sentences together. But they would ask me when. They'd say, "When is your birthday?" I'd say, 2nd of March, like that. And my parents worked for a bachelor who lived down by Harrisburg. He had a farm. He wasn't married, but after they moved from Crooks, they moved down there and worked as my dad was a farm laborer then, and helped this Nordal Elser on the farm. And my mother, of course, did the cooking and the housekeeping. And he was not very good at supplying the right ingredients for doing she couldn't do any gourmet cooking, but she was very, inventive, and she still made very, very good meals. I feel very lucky. I had such, I would say, a normal childhood growing up with 2 loving parents. I was only child for 6 years. I went to Sunday school at Augustana Lutheran Church. We sat on little chairs, and my parents were charter members. And I enjoyed Sunday school. We had a superintendent, Jenny Swenson. She was a single lady, never married, but her whole life was that church. So she was a wonderful Sunday school superintendent for many, many years. And I was confirmed there and married there. And my children were married. All my children were married there. We built that addition on. That was a wonderful, when we built that. And but before that, my husband was on the church council. They started a discussion about a pipe organ. And so many of the members said, well, this isn't that large a church. This church doesn't need something like that. And my husband was adamant. He said, I think it would be a very good addition. And they hung in there, and finally, and we, to this day, that pipe organ, there's that little room upstairs. That was a crying room, and it was wonderful for the mothers, because there was a rocker in there, and then we could open up those glass doors and hear the sermon. And, it was just a wonderful addition, and it was useful. And then also, it was a place where, like for weddings and stuff, that's where that's kind of where the bride, where I got dressed up there. I have pictures of my father escorting me down those steps. They took out the altar, and I thought that was rather strange at first to get used to. When we would come for communion, we would kneel at the altar. But then I guess through the years, so many people, if people didn't lean or didn't feel like kneeling down anymore, but they took the altar out. And I mean, we just, now it works for communion anyway. Well, this was a book that was given to my mother by her mother in 1942. Well, I read it every morning. And I feel my mother's presence, I think, more. But and never a day goes by that I don't think about my mother. This is a picture. I lost that one daughter, sadly, at 47. And this little book, it says, this is my mother's, to Ruth from Mother, August 24th, 1942. And this little poem was pasted in there. I like to walk the friendly road where friendly people dwell. And their friendly robins chirp and chirp, their friendliness to tell. Where friendly maples lift their arms to catch a friendly breeze, I like to pause and rest a while underneath the friendly trees. If all the peoples of the world would walk the friendly road, and pausing there would meditate, how it would ease their load. For God is closer there somehow, and there we find release. And there we find release from petty thoughts and care and strife, and find the world at peace. Well, I think faith is the building block of my life, that it sustains me. It has sustained me through all these years. And I feel like each day, especially, is a gift at this time in my life. At one time, there were 23 cousins around. So the Christmas Eve at Grandma Johnson's in Crooks was a big event, I'll tell you. And as the family grew and got bigger and bigger and more grandchildren, there was one of the 11 children, the youngest one, who stayed single for several years, and she's the one that lived with my grandmother and took care of her. They had this nice bungalow in Crooks. And as the family grew, and Christmas Eve would approach, she'd say, "Mom, I don't know how we're going to fit all these people in here at the table." My grandmother's reply was, I always remember this, where there's heart room, there's room. And that is so true. I mean, they set the big table in the dining room. They had a nice dining room. They set the big table, and the grown-ups ate first. And then the children had the second seating. So where there's heart room, there's room, no matter how small the space.